Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Striation 6 podcast. I am your host, Sam Chada. And as it is with every episode of the Striation 6 podcast, I am doing my best today to bring you free information to help you feel, function, look, and live better. And today we're talking about specifically exercise. Now, today's podcast is about reasons why your exercise for your back pain is not working. Now, this is an important topic to me for a few reasons. One is I see a lot of clients who have terrible, terrible back pain, and I can see how debilitating it is for people and how frustrated and scared people are that they can't seem to get rid of their back pain no matter how hard they try. And they're genuinely concerned that it's going to get worse if it's not intervened upon. They're frustrated because they can't exercise. Their quality of life is diminished. So, from an empathetic perspective towards others, I don't know if empathy can be towards myself, but from an empathetic perspective towards others, this podcast, this topic is very important to me. Now, another layer got added to that for me last year. I don't want to dwell too much on my own pain, but I had a bad bout of kind of total body pain about a year and a half ago, which included my back. I had there's a pain scale. Which you can find if you just Google, pain scale. There's a pain scale you can find where my pain got to about a 7 out of 10 at one point, if I'm being honest. Now, 7 out of 10 to some of you out there might not be so bad. The thing you have to understand about the pain scale is once you get to an 8, you're getting into really, really dangerous territory where your mind starts to go to terrible places. Chronic pain is very, very, very bad if you've ever experienced it. So I got to an honest 7, and it was sort of frightening because I had never experienced anything like that before. So it really took a personal turn for me at that point. So I'm happy to bring you this podcast today. I want you to be doing exercise to help with your back pain. So today I'm going to present some problems that might be present in the current exercise that you're doing for your back pain, some different ways to think about it, and then I'll introduce and talk maybe a little bit about a different avenue that you might want to take if you're trying to figure your back pain problems out, at least in part through exercise. Before I go into the meat and potatoes of this podcast, I want to do a brief disclaimer on two fronts. First of all, these recommendations and this approach that I'm taking with this podcast today does not constitute medical advice. I am not a doctor. I don't play one on the internet, so I'm not giving you medical advice here. So if you take this and try some of it, you're on your own, and it's on a trial and error basis. This is in no way intended to be a one size fits all or a medical recommendation. The second thing that I want to put out there today is I'm going to be very careful in how I approach this, so as to not at all sound like I'm demeaning or bringing down the approaches, the protocols, the exercise recommendations from other medical and paramedical practitioners out there, like your medical doctor, or orthopedic surgeon, or physiotherapist, or chiropractor. I have many colleagues in these medical and paramedical fields to whom I refer patients clients of mine that I am not able to serve because their pain or their situation is inappropriate for my skill set. So these people are hugely valuable. Their approach can be significantly helpful. So I would encourage you, if you are in a pain situation in your back or anywhere in your body, to explore as many avenues as possible to try to solve the problem. And the whole point of today's podcast is from an exercise perspective to help you think critically about the problem that you're trying to solve, evaluate whether or not what you're doing from an exercise perspective specifically is working, and how you might change things for the better. So I just wanted to put that quick disclaimer out there, and enjoy the rest of the podcast. I really hope it's helpful. That's the whole point. So we're going to go through three main reasons that the exercise for your back pain might not be working. Okay. The overarching reason, number one, is you might be overly dependent on stretching as exercise for your back pain. Now, stretching is a complicated topic. I used to be the kind of guy that says, don't stretch. And I've learned over the last 10 or 15 years that absolutes are less valuable than they seem. The most valuable place to have an absolute, like, don't ever do this or always do that, is the best place for it is in stroking my ego. So I try my best to keep them out. So when I say you may be overly dependent on stretching as an exercise for your back pain, I don't mean that you should never stretch. Here's what I want you to think about, okay? The thinking behind prescribing stretching to people who are in pain. As far as I can tell, there's 3 points to it. Okay. One, that the stretches actually can be helpful to your pain situation a certain percentage of the time. Whether or not that's a temporary bit of relief or long-term relief is a whole other story. And, we'll get into some of that a little later on. Stretching is easy to do in a variety of locations. You can stretch at home, you can stretch at the gym, you can stretch at your workplace, you can stretch on vacation, you could even stretch on an airplane, maybe to a lesser extent. You can sort of do it anywhere. So it's one of those take it with you everywhere sorts of exercises. And the third reason I think they're given is because depending on your level of pain, if you're in a lot of pain, some of the thinking is that the stretching can be gentle enough that the exercise is accessible even when you're in pain. The issue is that there are a lot of problems with stretching as an exercise. Okay. And the number one problem for me with stretching as an exercise, that it's not that they can't be solved. It just, it needs to be addressed. The first thing is, what do you mean by stretching? Okay. So I'm going to give you two examples of stretching that maybe seem the same, but they're actually very different in terms of their what's going on with them physically. So the first is, when you, and by the way, these are not stretches for back pain. They're just examples of stretches in general. Okay. So the first is when, you wake up in the morning and you kind of reach your arms over your head and you stretch. Okay. You sort of reach up overhead. Oh, good morning, world. Feels so good to be alive, right? I hope. Anyway, that is a motion and action done completely actively on your part. Okay. You are not, there's nothing passively pulling on your arms or your spine or your neck as you reach overhead. It's completely active on your part, but you feel that stretch. All right. The second, I'm going to do this carefully so I don't hit my microphone, is where you take one arm across your body and you're sort of warming up for chest day, bro. And you kind of pull it with your other arm. Now, you might think this is active too, because I'm actively pulling on my one arm with my other arm. But for the thing being stretched, so to speak, it's sort of passive. I'm being sort of pulled into this position. I'm relaxing my arm. There's ways to do this that is actually active, but that's a different podcast topic. And the thing that I want to point out to you is that those are two completely different things, not just because of the motion and position, but because of the voluntary nature of the one and the sort of involuntary passive nature of the other. Yet we call those both stretching. Okay. If you went for a walk, you wouldn't consider it the same as if you sat in a shopping cart and someone pushed you. You might still go a few blocks, but they're two very different ways of getting from point A to point B. Yet we call those two stretches the same thing. And here's my thinking on this. What unites the two of them, even though they're so different, is the sensation. So stretching is less, in just the way people commonly think about it, I feel like it's less about the action being taken in the body and more about the sensation you get when you do it. I mean, I'll have people lifting weights in the gym, under my supervision, and there'll be certain exercises where they go, oh, I love that. It feels like a really good stretch. They're describing a sensation in the exercise. There's nothing remotely close to sort of typical stretching that they're doing in the exercise. So I just wanted to throw that out there. What do you mean by stretching? I'm going to give you these stretches. What does that mean? What stretches are you actually doing to solve your back pain? How are they being done? And which ones actually tend to feel better? Is it the more passive ones so that you're being just sort of taken into the stretch position, or is it the more active ones that help you feel better? So something to think about there. We'll touch on something similar to this next point later on in the podcast. One other issue with stretching is that you're stretching the wrong area of the body. Now, this can happen for two reasons, okay? You might be stretching the wrong area of your body because you're performing the exercise incorrectly, all right? So whichever practitioner you're choosing to see tells you to move your body in a certain way towards a stretch, and you're doing something that's different, either because of failure of memory, or the setup is a little different, or you just can't recall. So you approximate what you think the practitioner was having you do, and it comes off wrong. So you might just be working on the wrong area of your body. And we'll touch on like I said, we'll touch on a similar point to this later. And similarly, also to be touched on later, you might be doing the stretch correctly, but the focus area of the stretch is inappropriate for your situation. So just as a sort of go to, if you have pain in your back, and that's what we're talking about today, you might be given a whole bunch of stretches, so to speak, that work on stretching the muscles in your back, allegedly. And it's actually not your back that needs attention. Okay. It's actually not your back that needs attention. It's another area of your body that is experiencing dysfunction, other areas, plural, of your body that are experiencing dysfunction. And you're stretching your back and you're not seeing any improvement because the back isn't the area that needs attention. The third reason that overly depending on stretching is maybe not a great idea is that the stretching might only be helpful temporarily. Now, this can happen with other forms of exercise as well. If you've ever had kind of mild pain, like a little twinge in your knee or a little cramp in your calf, or I don't know, just some mild kind of 1 or 2 out of 10 pain somewhere in your body, and then you do exercise that you like, that feels good, that's familiar to you, you'll notice the pain kind of dissipates, right? We call that an analgesic effect. All right. So there's this kind of analgesic effect of exercise, and that could extend to stretching. So there may be some stretches that you found online or that you've been given by someone to help with your back pain. And every time you do them, your back feels better, or at least a little better, but only for a little while. And the um the challenge that I would put out there in this situation is, and again, we'll talk about this later on, like, does that mean that it's working? Does that mean that it's working, or is it just more of a physical form of Advil? Now, don't get me wrong, Advil can be super helpful in a pain situation. I am not a don't take medicine guy. That's not a thing for me. Every situation requires different tools and different means to solve a problem. But if you're overly dependent on temporary fast relief solutions, you're not solving the problem. You're just deflecting the bad feelings. That has value, but it's not a complete solution. All right. The second reason, so that's the stretching part. So being overly dependent on stretching is not a great idea for those kind of sub reasons. All right. The second reason that the exercises for your back pain might not be working for you is that the exercises that you're using for the pain that you've been given are either too hard or they're too easy. Now, those sound like two very different things. They sound like opposite problems. They're really just two different ends of the same continuum. And I want to introduce a concept to you. There's this concept called the Goldilocks zone. All right. Now, it's not one that I've studied in depth. Originally, it applied to the study of stars and planets. And my understanding of it, and you can correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. I'm always happy to be wrong about this kind of stuff. But the idea is it alludes to the story, obviously, of the three little bears. And when something is just right, so to speak, the term originally referred to the range of orbits around a star within which a planet could be habitable, or in other words, how close or far a planet could be before liquid water, how close or far a planet could be to a star, before liquid water would either freeze or boil. And if you're in the Goldilocks zone, it would neither freeze nor boil. Like, we happen to be in the Goldilocks zone relative to the sun, thank goodness, or we'd all die because water would not be able to survive on this planet. And if you take that just as a concept and apply it to exercise, there's this idea that exercise can be too hard or too easy. But if it lands in this zone between the two, that's where it's actually too productive. All right. So there are people who believe, and believe is a whole other podcast, right? There are people who believe that exercise needs to be hard all the time. And it's just not true. Exercise needs to be consistent and progressive. Sometimes exercise needs to be hard depending on the person, their goals, and the individual situation where they are in their exercise process. But it doesn't have to be hard all the time. And particularly when you're in pain, finding an appropriate kind of Goldilocks zone level of effort is essential to your problem solving progress when it comes to exercise for the situation. So if your exercises for your back pain are too hard, you'll know because the pain or the discomfort of doing the exercise is intolerable. Okay. Now, some unwanted negative sensation when you're working on a pain problem with exercise is probably reasonable to expect. However, if the pain goes higher, then if the pain, let's put it that way, if the pain goes notably higher than it was during the exercise or notably higher than it normally is during the exercise, that's probably a sign that the exercise is too hard. Okay. Another sign that the exercise is too hard is that maybe the pain doesn't feel worse during the exercise, but it consistently gets worse after the exercise. So if you're coming out of your back pain exercise protocol or homework or however you want to put it, and saying, okay, that didn't feel too bad, but then you're hobbled in an even worse state and see no improvement. You don't come down any lower on the pain scale after a bit of recovery. Your back pain exercise is probably a little too hard. Okay. The third sign that that your exercise is too hard when you're trying to solve your back pain problem is that you begin to have pain in adjacent areas to the original pain site. And I should say, without any improvement in the original pain site. Okay. So it's sort of, it's, I'll call it normal for pain to move around a little bit as you're problem solving through an exercise process. But if the pain in your back is the same or worse, and now you have a sore hip too after following a certain exercise process to try to solve the back pain, that's not a solve. That's an increase in the problem. All right. And that's a signal to cease what you're doing and reevaluate. All right. And then another sign is that the exercise drains you or causes you excess fatigue. Now, you might be thinking, well, exercise is supposed to make me tired. Exercise is supposed to stimulate your system in a way that requires maybe a little more recovery than someone who didn't exercise as hard as you that day. But while you're doing it and after you've done it, there should be a sense of being energized from the exercise. Like, unless you're going into and this is away from the whole pain topic, unless you're going into an exercise session with the intention of wringing yourself out for some stated goal oriented, process oriented reason, and you're going in consciously knowing, like, after this, I'm going to be toast, I'm going to need extra food, I'm going to need extra sleep, and I'm overreaching a little bit to train for this certain thing, that's a different story. When we're talking about pain and we're talking about people who are just exercising for health and longevity, this is a situation where we need to frame exercise as something that helps us feel energized better when we're done than when we started. And particularly if you're dealing with pain and the exercise doesn't hurt, it doesn't make the pain particularly worse, but afterwards you just feel completely zonked, like you need to go to sleep, like you can hardly keep your eyes open, or it's difficult to breathe. That's a problem, and that should cause you to reevaluate. So I should say, when we're talking about the exercise being too hard, sometimes the issue is not the exercise, but how you're doing it. Okay. So there's a couple of cues or a couple of little changes that you can try that if this is happening during your exercise, changing it in these two seemingly small, but they're actually quite significant ways can make a difference. Okay. And it sounds so basic. This one in particular, with the kind of clients I see that are, sort of type A successful people, is a big deal. Slow down. Woosah. Slow down the exercise. As if you move quickly particularly if you're moving your spine or an area adjacent to your spine when you're in a pain state, moving quickly adds a lot of literally adds a lot of force and load into, not load, but adds a lot of forces into the exercise that might be making the exercise unintentionally harder than it ought to be, harder than it was supposed to be. Your practitioner or your YouTube person or your exercise professional had this certain idea in mind for how you should do this. And you say, oh, I don't have time to do 15 reps. I'm just going to do 15 reps really fast. So it's more like I did 9. Like, yeah, those 6 saved rep time things are going to really make a difference in your day. Anyway, I get it. You got a lot to do. I'm not judging you. I'm just poking a little fun at you to get you to maybe take a look at yourself and say, why don't I just slow this down? Why don't I just do this better? Why don't I just do this in a way that serves me rather than doing it in a way that allows me to say, dear diary, I did my exercise today and I saved time while doing it. No. Do it well. Do it well. Slow it down. Slow it down. It can make a huge difference. The second is use less load. Now, this is a longer discussion. Potentially, it gets into really dorky physics stuff that I really love, but most people fall asleep. Use less load. Make the exercise lighter. less heavy. And just doing that could also take it from being an appropriate exercise to help progress your back pain situation into a lesser pain situation, um, from something that's going to aggravate your situation and make it worse. If your body can't tolerate the loads you've been prescribed, it's the wrong prescription. And if you say, well, my so and so practitioner said I need to be doing these exercises with this much weight, if it's causing you more pain, it's wrong. Straight up, it's wrong. And I don't know a single good exercise professional, physiotherapist, chiropractor, doctor who would say, yeah, keep using that heavy load that hurts. No, lighten up. It's okay. Your ego will survive and you'll feel better. All right. So the key takeaway from this is if your exercise is too hard, then it will not be effective in solving your problem. Consider altering it so that it's appropriately challenging and then progress it slowly as you feel better. Okay. Now we're going to go into the exercise being too easy. So back into the Goldilocks zone, just to quickly review. If your exercise is too easy, it's ineffective. It's not, you need whatever you're trying to do with exercise, which whether it's solve a back pain problem or grow muscle or increase your, your cardio capacity, whatever may have you lift more weight, any of that stuff. If the exercise is not significant enough to stimulate the kind of adaptation you need to move toward your goal, it's ineffective. All right. So exercise that's too easy might not directly make your pain worse, but if it prevents your system from improving, which would allow the pain to get better, then it's sending you back into your day-to-day life without the stimulus needed to improve your situation. So then life might make it worse. So it wouldn't be the exercise itself making it worse. It would be the exercise being ineffective so that you're going about your day with just as kind of crappy of a system that's in a lot of pain as when you started. So it's also no good. All right. Now, there's a couple of reasons that you might be doing the exercise too easily, and they're completely understandable. Just from a human perspective, they're completely understandable. The first one is you're afraid of making your pain worse. So you don't make an appropriate effort. You make an inappropriately low level of effort. I have so much empathy for this. Like when you're in pain, when I was at my 7 out of 10 back pain, I was so scared to move. I was so scared to move in any direction because there was this like sort of low lying level of pain constantly, like a 3 out of 10, and it would just shoot to 7 or 8, and it would be, and then the 7 or 8 would stick around and then it would go away and then I'd move in another way and it would shoot up again. It was like this kind of surprise, like it's like I was getting an electric shock at untold intervals. So I was constantly on alert. So I get the idea of being afraid and being tenuous about your approach to your exercise because you're afraid of pain. It's not serving you. It's not serving you. And yes, as you start to move around, you might feel some pain. But if you don't move at all, and if you don't do the exercise at an appropriate level to help stimulate the change needed, okay, to affect your muscular system and all the other systems in your body to make your pain situation better, help eliminate those unwanted feelings of pain, the situation is not going to change. So your fear is not serving you in the context of exercising for your back pain. Okay. The other problem could be that you have insufficient access to the right exercise tools. All right. So there are a lot of people out there who say, everything you need to solve your back pain problems through exercise is at home because you should just be doing things on the floor or with a TheraBand. And like, if I said to you, everything you need to build a house is available to you in a basic toolbox you could buy at Home Depot for $150. I mean, probably could do it. But why would you want to when there's all these other tools available that make the process much more efficient and at the end of the day, less expensive because they're so efficient and because they can affect change in such a vastly improved way. A good gym for someone who has longevity and health in their foresights has the tools that will help you do all this sort of typical exercise stuff, build strength, build muscle, build cardio capacity, and all that stuff. But it also has the tools that will help someone like you who's in pain solve your problems with appropriate exercise. So, not having access to the right tools and being limited just by what you could get at home or what you could get in a smaller studio might be limiting your ability to solve your pain problem with appropriate exercise, because the best exercise tools are simply not available to you. So the key takeaway from this, that your back exercise being too easy, is that the effort and intensity of your exercises for your back pain must be appropriate, neither too difficult, nor too easy to be effective. And you have to have the right tools. And if you don't have access to the right tools, if the stuff you have just at home or in a limited means situation doesn't provide effective or sufficient enough of a stimulus to help move your problem along, your problem's not going to improve. Now, this final reason that the exercises for your back pain are not working is going to sound kind of funny at first, and we've alluded to it in a really basic way, or in a really overview kind of way earlier in the podcast. One reason that your exercises for your back pain might not be working is that they're overly focused on your back. All right. Now, we've all heard the whole idea that the whole body is connected. All right. A lot of times, though, when it comes to pain situations and we're scared and we're going through maybe the more typical or standard protocols to help solve problems related to pain through exercise, if our back hurts, we get a bunch of exercises that sort of focus on the back in these sort of immediately adjacent areas, maybe the trunk or the abs or the core, whatever the cool way is to phrase it these days, the stuff that's on the front of where the back is. Okay. And there's this whole central nervous system, this brain and spinal cord thing that govern your entire body, including the muscle system. The interactions between the brain and the muscles, I'm not a neurologist, and again, I don't play one on the internet, but basic principles, your central nervous system governs your whole body, okay? It gives messages to subsystems in the body, like the muscular system, the cardiovascular system, the lymphatic system, all the other systems in the body. It also receives information from those systems, okay? When we're talking about the brain and the muscular system, the thing you have to understand when it comes to pain, okay, is pain is a physical sensation that is a summation of everything going on in your body. And it's a signal of excess stress in a certain area of the muscle system or in a certain area of your body, all right? Because your central nervous system is plastic and it can adapt and it can change constantly to keep you moving, because its prime directive is movement. And that's no different. That is literally the same thing as saying the prime directive is survival. Because if you can't move, you're going to die. If you can't move, you can't get water, you can't get food, you can't move out of the way of something coming at you. So the prime directive is movement. Your brain will figure out ways to help you move no matter where the mild dysfunction is in your body, until it goes so badly that you've got this pain signaling happening. Okay. So the thing to keep in mind is, following from the basic principle that everything's connected, all right, within the system, is that dysfunction anywhere in your body, in your muscle system, let's say, can lead to unwanted sensations, pain, and dysfunction in other parts of your muscular system and in other parts of your body. And similarly, on the other side of that, improvement in function anywhere in your body that requires it improves function everywhere in your body. At the most general level, okay, any improvement anywhere in the system improves the system as a whole, if that makes sense. Okay, so following from that, it may not be your back that needs the attention. And this is where things can get complicated, because if you're thinking like, well, how do I figure this out? What areas should I target? If it's not my back, what areas should I target? That is the question. And I feel badly, but I can't answer you. I could here's the top 3 areas you should look at if your back hurts other than your back. And it's like, okay, cool. We could do that. I've seen in my muscle system work practice, and I'm starting to introduce the idea of muscle system work here. I've seen back pain resolve through foot, function improvement. I've seen back pain improved from neck function improvement. I've seen back pain improved from hand and wrist function improvement. And if that sounds crazy to you, that's fine. But you'd be amazed to see what happens if you were to experience the process yourself of actually using a data-driven, customized approach to figuring out where your system is experiencing dysfunction. And that as that dysfunction improves through various parts of the system, how your whole system gets better, and how doing something nowhere near your back can actually help your back to feel better. Now, maybe it doesn't resolve it in one shot. It's not finding the one thing. There is no the one thing. Okay. There's many, many things, but it's about a process. All right. Now, you could guess, you can make an educated guess about this based on studies, or you could go through a personalized approach. All right. And I'll talk about that a little more later. All right. So, to kind of summarize this whole thing, thinking about strengthening adjacent or distant parts of your muscular system from your back does have the potential to solve your back problems. And I guess when I said I would talk about this a little bit more later, I'm talking about it now. So it's technically later, but it's like 30 seconds later. All right. So the idea here, summarizing this whole situation, that the exercises for your back are overly focused on your back. The right exercise helps win your pain problem solving situation. So searching out exercise for your back pain is certainly worthwhile. The right exercise at the appropriate intensity can feel just unbelievable in how it helps improve your system. And it's not even, a lot of times, like having gone through this myself, it's not even that it's like my pain is there and my pain is gone. It could be my pain is there and then I do some stuff that's appropriately targeted and I still feel some pain, but there's this sense of an ability to move. There's this sense of agency that's developed with the right kind of exercise that says, even though I have pain, I can now somehow, some way move more smoothly with more confidence under greater levels of load with less effort. It's like my body is completely changed. And if you're someone who's experiencing back pain that's preventing movement, preventing you from doing the things you love, and you're frustrated about that, and you're even worried that if you don't intervene on it properly, it's going to get worse, exploring muscle system work might be the right move for you. Okay. So, muscle system work is a customized, data-driven process that we offer here at Striation 6. We're one of very few facilities in Toronto. In the downtown area, I think we're one of two facilities. In the GTA, I think we might be one of 3 or 4 facilities that offers muscle system work. And the idea with it is it's a data-driven, personalized approach to help figuring out how to solve your pain problems through exercise. All right, I'm going to put a link in the description of the podcast today so you can find out more about muscle system work, how it works, how the approach goes. And I'm also going to put a link to a form that will allow you to schedule your initial consultation. Our initial consultation is free. The reason we do a free initial consultation is not to give you something for free because free is better than paying for something. It's that we don't know if we can help you. All right. The last thing we're going to say is we can help everybody. There are people we can't help. If your pain is too extreme, for example, if you're over a 6 or 7 out of 10 in terms of pain, when I show you that pain scale, I'm referring you out. If you're at an 8 or 9, you got to go to the hospital. I'm not the guy for you. I'm not the guy that can help you. You got to get some control over that pain before we can do anything. All right. The second reason is there could be lots of things causing your pain that are not related to your muscular system. And if we find out in the consultation that some of those red flags are available, we may recommend that you get some medical intervention before we try to proceed with any kind of exercise-based muscle system work. So we will only take on clients that we are confident that we can help. And if you're going through a back pain situation and you want to do your best to resolve it through exercise, I can absolutely applaud you. At the very, very least, if you don't check out the information link on muscle system work that I'm going to be providing here today, or you don't, reach out to book your initial consultation, that's completely fine. Try just using the principles that I outlined today. All right. I've also written this. I've also done an equivalent blog post to this podcast. I will link that in the description as well. So if you want to read the blog and just kind of have it with you as a guideline for how you might approach changing the exercise you already have or seeking out exercise to help your situation on your own, that's completely fine. When you're ready to help, though, we are here for you. All right. If we feel confident after your initial consultation that we can help you, we'll invite you into the process. In the meantime, though, I do wish, having gone through it myself, I do wish you all the best in resolving your back pain issue. I hope the pain stops as soon as possible and you can get back to living your life with full body confidence again, doing the things you love the most with the people you love the most. That's it for today's podcast. I hope you found it helpful. Please remember to like and subscribe. Send the podcast to a friend who might find it useful, who's maybe going through some pain anywhere in their body, because these principles really apply to pain anywhere in the body, not just the back. You can apply them anywhere. And I'm looking forward to hearing from you, and have a wonderful day.